Hey guys, and we are back for episode 10. It has been...
train. Last time.
Man, dude.
You just don't want the train in the very first audio clip.
All right. Fair enough. It's going to get hot in here, dude, real quick.
Let's get this done.
All right. Let's see. We're 3 minutes in. Okay. Hello, everybody, and we're back for episode 10. It's been a little while. Again,
it's like 6 months, actually.
Yeah, January 10th, I believe, was the day, or 9th or something, was the day that we last posted an episode. Yeah, kind of just took a little break, a little hiatus, working, kind of enjoying life.
The life and everything in between, man. It gets to you.
Everything in between. It does get to you. So sometimes you have to just take off a little bit and enjoy yourself. But during that time, a lot has happened.
A couple of developments in both of our lives. I finally graduated from college after a million years.
Congratulations.
Got that degree from DePaul. Thank you. So that was fun. Just on the old job hunt now, looking for journalism jobs and more copywriting type jobs. So if anybody's out there, got an opening for me, let me know. And that's pretty much it for me. I'm going to be moving out of the city pretty soon. So just got to figure out life and everything in between. Everything's coming up.
No more pretty view. From here on out, we'll find a spot. I'll probably do it in the living room like I did with the episode with Adam Pines and everything. So welcome to my father's living room. Anyway, so then for me, just been working a lot. The biggest thing in my life recently, the biggest purchase, there's two big purchases every adult makes. It is a house. That's probably the biggest. And then
the more fun one.
The more fun one is a car. I recently just purchased, or not just, in February, purchased a car, and it's a Lexus RCF. I think it was a previous episode we talked about
looking at it. You wanted the ISF, right? And I was doing everything in my power to talk you out of it. Why would anybody spend $30,000+ on a 10-year-old Toyota? Was beyond me at the time, but I think what we can both agree is that you made a much wiser decision, spent a little bit more money in all reality, but you got something from a much more recent time. What was it, 2015?
2015. And
newer tech, newer chassis. You made the right choice. Why don't you talk about your purchase a little bit?
The interior is... it was a 12,000-mile car, bought it from a 55-year-old owner, and it was his midlife crisis car. And he optioned it out very nicely for me, so I might thank that guy.
And then he trade it back in for a pickup?
He traded it back in for a showroom Dodge Ram 1500.
Thank you, Wisconsin.
Thank you, Wisconsin. But yeah, no, he optioned it out, so he took the tax hit and he took the depreciation, and I just
swept in there
and took that.
Yep, scooped it up.
Also, taxes still sucked on that. Thank you, Cook County, Illinois. But so the interior's awesome, sound system great, but who cares about that? V8. 467 horsepower, 389 foot-pounds of torque.
Only naturally aspirated V8 in this segment.
It is awesome.
In a land of ever-shrinking displacement and the application of force induction, the Lexus is one of the few harbingers of naturally aspirated V8 goodness, and for that, the car has begun to win my heart over because historically I'm kind of a poo-pooer of Lexus. When the RCF and the RC Coupe first came out, I thought they were heinous. I think I described all of those cars of having, the Predator front end grille, but getting more exposure to it, especially in the RCF trim. You get the 350 S Sports, okay. When you see it in the RCF, much more special, much more, protruding front fascia. It's striking, and I think it could be potentially divisive for some people. I have grown much more fond of it.
When that car first came out, I did not like it at all.
I was a hater.
It was 3,950 pounds. I was like, wow, that's really heavy, which it is heavy. And it bumped up like 40-something horsepower with the ISF, blah, blah, blah. Did all these things, but the front grille, I was like, I like the grille, but the lights I didn't like. Over time, I liked it more. And then once I was looking at ISF seriously, then I was like, what's an extra little bit of money? And then I looked at RCF.
That's the danger zone.
It's the danger zone.
$3,000 here. If I'm going to do $3,000, let's go 5.
And then 5 turns into 10.
Yeah.
Oh, no. And then you're like, shit. But once I started looking at RCF seriously and like looking at them, checking them out, I'm like, I fell absolutely in love. I was like, okay, RCF over ISF.
And thank goodness, most recently you slapped on a RR Racing valve exhaust, so now the thing actually sounds proper, not like a completely muted Lexus, kind of like it did originally.
It sounds nuts. People turn their heads in the city when you drive by. Burnouts are fun. Tunnels are great.
Car sounded extremely restricted from the factory, which is, kind of pandering toward, not pandering, but, designing the car towards their target audience, which wants something that's fun and smooth, but also, quiet and doesn't get too noisy on the highway because I don't want to hear the engine when I'm on my way to golf. So I think you finally kind of got it to that sweet spot where you can click the button and make it loud and obnoxious and click it, and it pretty much goes back to stock audio tone.
Yep.
So going from that, I mean, you've lived with the car for several months now. Let's go over some of the things that you aren't so fond of on the car. Is there anything about the car that, kind of bugs you or something you wish you could change about it?
The biggest thing I wish I could change on it is the weight. That's like, it's the only thing I really notice. So it corners better than any normal sedan that really you'd ever be in, or any normal car.
Normal being the
like
operative word there. We're not
is,
talking about Alfa Romeos or M4s or anything like that.
Yeah,
or
so
M3s, excuse me.
It's definitely it handles better than any normal car. And it feels different than a normal car for sure. But it's like highway off ramps and high speed stuff. It's very stable and there's a lot of stability. It feels great. It's when you're in that like 30 mile an hour, like 40 to 30-ish mile an hour zone where like, or below like 25, and you take a hard right-hander where you're moving like all that mass and inertia into a different direction really quickly versus like a highway off-ramp where you're taking it over a long period of time and the tires can grip. It's when you're taking that sharp 90-degree corner, you feel the front wheels come out on you. You feel the weight braking.
It's like the axles are fighting each other.
They're fighting the front engine. You just feel everything is just heavy as hell.
It's not an autocross car.
So, and that's like my biggest complaint. Sometimes, like my Subaru, for example, the Legacy, I can take slower corners quicker in the Legacy than I can in the RCF. So like that 25 mile an hour, 20 mile turn, if you want to just whip it hard and go right or something, or go left real quick on a left turn lane or left arrow light, my Subaru, I'll have moments where I'm like, that was faster than my RCF.
Well, you have a lot less weight over the front axle.
400-pound car versus it's just 500 pounds lighter.
Right, in a big 5-liter V8 compared to the tiny little four-banger.
Flat four. And then also all-wheel drive definitely has a little bit of play in there, that low speed area. So, but overall, that's my biggest point is weight. But again,
we should get those cars side by side in an autocross. We should set up our own course and see if we can set some comparative times.
The RCFs would still win just because of pure power.
I mean, if it was a really tight turning course.
If it was tight turning course, yes. But also turning radius then comes into play. But overall, that's my biggest complaint. Other than that, there's a little few like weird interior things. And I'm just like, why is that a thing? Or like the seatbelt is so far back, like more abnormally far back than like a 335 or something that I've been in recently, where I'm just like, I can like reach it. And here you have to break your back to get back there. So it's like, if it's not, there's these little clips that are worthless that don't hold the seatbelt at all. I'm like, okay, Lexus could have definitely thought of that a little bit better. Other than that, though, there's a little the touchpad. You get used to it, but sometimes it glitches out and you're moving it, and then nothing happens for 2 seconds, and all of a sudden you're in like some weird menu. Like
I've noticed that my mom, she has the Lexus NX, and has the same touchscreen.
Just you get used to it, but also you're just like, something could be better. The issue is though with car interiors like that, how could you make it better? I don't exactly know the answer.
I'll tell you. You take that screen that in your car is so far back, and your car doesn't have a touch screen. It's all activated via buttons down here, in the center console. Bring that forward a little bit, make it touch, receptive, and get rid of all the BS haptic feedback. It's like you're dragging a computer mouse. It feels so antiquated to me when you're playing with it.
My issue though,
make it more intuitive.
My issue though, is that
Apple CarPlay. That's a big improvement.
Keep in mind, this is 2015. Apple CarPlay wasn't big till like 2017 model years, where they started putting that in like every car. It was a thing in 2015. Apple CarPlay was not like a huge thing really until like only about 2 or 3 years ago. You can look it up. Apple CarPlay wasn't that big. So now all the new Lexus have Apple CarPlay, but those are all 2018s and 19s and above. But now 2015, that just didn't exist.
For the record, Apple CarPlay went live on March 10th, 2014.
Okay, 14. So I don't know what cars would even have that, because even then, I wasn't looking at cars in 2014, so I had no clue what.
And also, if Apple CarPlay is a main deciding factor, you're probably not considering a sports car.
Yeah. So other than that, though, I love my RCF. I've actually absolutely fallen in love. The engine's awesome. I nerd out about the engine. It's like Atkinson cycles and stuff. I always tell people about it, and people are like, I don't care, dude.
Just need a couple PSI of boost, and we'll call it a day, right?
I'm not supercharging that thing.
That's my next goal, is to get you to slap a blower on it.
You're the one who wants an RCF now. You've texted me that, which you've come to the dark side.
Yeah, so I've been carless for like 3 years, ever since I boosted the G, and that, went kaboom, and I was moving to the city. I figured I do not need a car. However, there has been a infinity-sized hole in my heart for the last several years, and not having a vehicle has been troublesome. So I've had to vicariously have enjoyment through your car and through friends' cars. So yeah, I mean, like most car guys, I spend tons of hours on Car Gurus and Cars.com and You Pick Your Car website, just kind of farting around and really just speculating as to what I would like to purchase next, which is so irresponsible when I don't even know where I'll be living in 6 months, but that's a different story. So yeah, I mean, a lot of me is really wanting to go back towards the Infinity market. The VR30 powertrain in the current cars has a very, very high amount of potential left on the table from the factory, and tuning companies like AMS Performance from Chicago are unlocking massive power gains out of these cars. And, simple bolt-ons and a tune is netting over 150 foot-pounds of more torque to the wheels at the car. So, I mean, you can do the math there. There's videos of very stock-looking Q50, base cars that are walking Ferrari 458s and Vipers. So that's something that was really attractive to me, and I'd love to go back into the bolt-on route. But my biggest thing that would make me reconsider is that Jesco transmission that goes into the Infinities, that 7-speed. 10 years ago, that was a great transmission. It was just fine. In 2019, where ZF8 speeds are pretty much the industry standard, Porsche has the PDK, dual clutches making in their way to most cars, or at the very least a good, solid, transmission. That was one of the weak links of my the Infinity. When it was over 500 horsepower, I felt like I had a glass transmission, and every shift I would kind of just hope that it would grab. And I'd mess with hydraulic line pressure and bump up the pressure of the solenoids to make sure it would grip as well as possible in all the clutch packs. But it's like you redesign the entire car, but you maintain that same transmission. It's like if you're going to give it a beautiful, super powerful new motor, baby GTR engine, essentially, inspired from the VR38, the VR38 DTT. It's like, at least give it some better running gear. You know what I mean? So it's like, if I'm going to bump that thing up to 500 wheel horsepower like I'd want to do, I don't want to be driving around with that lack of assurance that the car's going to be able to handle it. So that's what brings me into the RCF territory, because, Toyota reliability, you compare it to the competition, it can be had for relatively cheap by comparison to, your RS5s and C63s of comparable mileage. And I think I'd be a lot less tempted to modify it. That's what it really comes down to. Because once I get a car and I start buying things here and there, it's like I'm going down the rabbit hole, and the only way out is like I did with the last car, new transmission and a new motor, which is just, superfluous and not something that I should be dealing with in a new car like that. So yeah, RCF is attractive to me. It's something that I can see myself driving and, maintaining some of the things that are important to me about a car that made me consider the Infinity in the first place. Comfortable, relative luxury, sounds great on the interior. I'm talking, the audio system has to be nice. I really like music.
Mark Levinson knows what's up.
Mark Levinson, you have a kick-ass sound system in your car. I don't know how many watts it is, but it sounds, it's got to be at least a 500 watt system. It sounds really nice.
I think it's more than
probably,
that. It's
yeah.
more than that. That was the first thing when I was driving it home. When you came up to the dealership, we bought it together. He drove me up there. But the next day, when I finally was like, all right, let's mess with the audio system and stuff, I was just like, it was
blown away.
It was like that moment where you go from iPhone headphones and you put your first pair of Bose or big Sony over your headphones. You're like, I've been missing the sounds in music. When I got the RCF and I listened a song, I was just like, holy shit.
Yeah, there's more stuff that you weren't hearing initially, right?
I was blown away. And my Subaru has Harman Kardon, which is a respectable stereo system. It is a good stereo system, but then Mark Levinson was just like, no.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a number of factors that would make me consider that. If it was really up to me and if I had the money, I'd be chasing down a new RS5. That's something that I'm really attracted to.
$90,000.
Well, I would obviously not go for one brand new. Cost of ownership and just historical manufacturer reliability. I mean, it's kind of hard to argue with Toyota's formula, especially knowing that your car just has a big chunk of a naturally aspirated V8. There's not going to be much going wrong in that car. It's under relatively low stress. The car's not under a ton of load. It's not really high strung. it's just like a laid back, torquey engine, and that's very attractive to me. So that's something I would definitely consider in the future. However, before I make any rash decision, I need to, nail a solid job, get back into the work life, and start making some money again, and then I'll reconsider purchasing a vehicle.
And then 2015s are just going to be even cheaper than what I paid for.
Yeah.
And the market opens up. But, yeah, really quick, though, actually. Speaking of cars, I'll just do this really quick. We always do a little segment of which car would you save or buy. So your price range, Matthew.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on Auto Trader. I typed in 75, or what did I type in? 60. I think I did. Okay, $65,000 to $75,000.
New Corvette. What?
That's what you think I was gonna pick. Originally, I was okay. All right, talking about what? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
for that price.
All right,
the C8.
Guess what? That's not out yet.
Okay.
So you're stuck.
Fair enough.
You're stuck with these cars. There are some good cars that would stump you. I have one that I know you would pick, but I'm not gonna do it.
All right, what are my options, man? What is my price range here? $65K?
Right, $75,000. Both of these are exactly $75,000. Where is it? Okay. Used 2018 Jaguar F-Type R Coupe all-wheel drive.
How many miles?
11,545 miles. I feel like you're gonna go for the Jaguar.
What's the other option?
Right, the other option initially, used 2009 Aston Martin DB9 Coupe with the V12.
Is it a 6-speed?
Let me look here.
Because if it's a 6-speed, I would potentially consider that.
6-speed manual. Check this out.
I'm going to go with the Jaguar, and let me tell you exactly why. It's 10-year newer car, and 10-year-old Astons without a warranty are a nightmare. And yeah, so that was actually a very easy decision for me. Thank you very much.
So the other one was originally, what was I going to do? Originally, I had certified 2016 Porsche Cayman GTS.
Oh.
Boo,
versus the Jag?
Versus 2019 Chevrolet Camaro ZL1 Coupe.
A ZL1.
I said I knew you were going to keep this.
The Cayman GTS, that's mid-engine, and that's a totally different driving dynamic.
This thing has 788 miles on it.
But LSA powered GM 650 horsepower.
That's why I knew if I did the Camaro, you were going to choose.
That's just a different animal.
If I had done that over the Jaguar F-Type.
F-Type versus Camaro ZL1. Is it a 1LE or just a standard ZL1? Because that might make a difference. Does it have the little canards on the front?
It has little tiny canardies.
Okay, so it's a 1LE. Oh no, that's just a basic ZL1.
It doesn't have the canards.
I'd honestly have to drive him back to back. I've driven cars with that supercharged V8.
You got key for key. You got to choose right now. You have 10 seconds.
2019 Jaguar or 2019 Camaro ZL1? So they're both new.
They're both 10,000 miles or under. Brand new cars.
ZL1 for me, man. There's just too much praise for that Alpha platform, and you talk to any journalist that's driven the ZL1, and they're like, that is a world-class supercar territory. The Jaguar would be like more satisfying. My old man characters have wanted to have something with a good interior. The interior on the ZL1 is dog shit compared to the Jaguar. The Jaguar is a much better looking car. It's a gentleman racer, where the Camaro I would just want for just outright thrills. So yeah, for this one, I got to go ZL1 over the F-Type.
Fair enough. Oh man,
there's a lot of
I hate looking at this.
I know, you can't torture yourself.
Shelby GT 350, 2018 LC500, which the LC500 is awesome. But there's so many Corvettes. There's like 1,000,001 Corvettes.
Well, Corvettes, we can talk about how those prices are probably going to be getting pushed down within the next couple months due to a little announcement made last night by GM Corporate. Obviously, if you're watching this, the official Stingray unveil was last evening with appearances from the presidents of GM and the chief engineer. A lot of really cool history that kind of poured into that live stream. I don't know if you watched it. I sat and watched the entire live stream, and there was a point where I was just like, okay, get to the freaking car already, because we've heard every single tidbit of Chevrolet history over the last 60 years. That said, initial impressions of this new mid-engined Chevy Corvette, very strong. This car is everything that I wanted from a mid-engine Corvette in terms of aesthetic and what I know about the car as of right now. I haven't driven it, obviously. I haven't even seen it in person, but everything I've seen from it and heard in terms of technology that's going to it, it's like everything I wanted and more.
But also, if they can just like simply take this down $10,000 or more, $15,000 once the new one comes out, I would be very happy with this car.
So that's what I'm saying. We need people to get into these, 2020 Stingrays and let the 2018 Z06s and all those just get pushed right down in price.
Oh, because
a lot of trade-ins need to start happening.
RCF would be down, and then 700 horsepower
It was 650, but yeah, I mean, extremely sexual.
I would do things to it.
Oh yeah, just a little upper pulley.
I mean, sexual things.
Okay.
I'm keeping it at 650 horsepower.
Okay.
I just said I would do things to it.
Oh, gotcha. That makes sense. I'd probably do the same in that position.
Yes.
But yeah, let's talk a little bit about the Stingray. I know you've looked at some pictures of it. You have your typical reactionary types that are online that love to just spout garbage. I mean, these are the people, you saw them when the Supra released. Yes, I mean, it's easy to talk crap about the Supra when you've never driven it. It's, it's a BMW, but these are the same people as soon as they see a mid-engine proportion car, oh, that's just a poor man Ferrari, or hey, it looks like a McLaren or a Lambo. It's like, no, like you have to understand that once you go to a mid-engine architecture, there's certain proportions that cars are going to mimic just based off of things like crash regulations, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. There's certain constraints that manufacturers have to abide by to make a car road legal. And to assume that there would be some sort of a mid-engine car that wouldn't look like anything you've ever seen before is laughable to me and rather ignorant.
And the fact that, and what's insane is that Chevy was able to get that car. What the starting price is? What they say under 60.
It's going to be $59,999,999.
Yeah.
For like the base that you do not want. It's going to be like, here is garbage.
Base you don't want that you would have, no dealership would ever put on their lot. You would have to order that thing specifically. But for the ones that you're going to want are 75,000.
Yeah, so let's call the base at this point, just like when we saw the C7 get unveiled. The very first one I ever saw in person was a neighbor's Z51 package C7, which is just like the red one they showed last night. That features the sport exhaust, a little bit more aggressive splitter, some additional cooling, larger, I believe it's larger oil cooler, a little bit more downforce, bigger spoiler on the back. So we'll call that one the base because that also options the sport exhaust, which gives the car, the current car has what they're now calling the LT2. Yeah. So it's the 6.2 liter carried over from the old car, slightly updated with the sport exhaust. They're saying it makes 495 horsepower, and that's good for what Chevy claims to be 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds. And we're talking about a car that's in the performance territory of, like, let's say when the first Nissan GTR came out, it was about $70,000 to $80,000. We're talking about a car that can match and exceed that performance, American made in 2019. That's that original price. The current GTR Nismo is over $200,000. So to see this mid-engine thing, I honestly was swelling up a little bit of American pride last night. I mean, I'm watching this car come out. They said $60,000 for the base. I was like, holy crap, like, let me check my bank account real quick.
Even if... Okay, so the first year that these come out in 2020, everyone's going to be on a waiting list. People are ordering their own. There's going to be no $60,000 ones. They're all going to be 9 out of 10 or more are going to be $70,000.
No guy is going to option it at a $60,000.
So look, let's just even call it $75,000. Realistically, that's what they're going to be. $75,000 for $75,000.
It's a lot of car.
That is insane. Mid-engine. It looks like, your McLaren 458 type of architecture style, type of look. Mm-hmm. The one thing I texted you about last night was the front nose. There's something about the front nose I'm not a huge fan of. It doesn't go down far enough. I was looking at 570s. I was looking at 458s, 720s, 650s, and all the other super hypersport cars that are mid-engine. And there's something about the Corvette. The nose is just very raked up. But I'm sure there has something to do with cooling there. There's something.
Once you see it in person.
I'm aware. I'm going to pop an American boner.
And no Chevy, is really touting the packaging on this car. They showed the frunk and the trunk on this vehicle was deep enough in the rear to hold 2 sets of clubs, and the front was deep enough. And during the press release, they were talking about this new polymer that they made where, it's so lightweight that a solid brick of it, he said, would float in water. But it's also extremely heat resistant and extremely lightweight. So, the amount of luggage that you're able to fit into this thing is very surprising.
Dude, it feels like the Corvette grew up.
Yeah.
In like the brown colored one, it reminded me of the 570 GT, the touring model. Or was it 560 GT or 570?
The 570 GT.
570 GT, yeah. It just reminded me of like a touring, like a nice model that like an older gentleman would take his wife out in. And like have his go to the golf course and like have his golf clothes, and there's like that nice, beautiful brown color.
Right, and they're really stepping it up with all the customization, way more color options. The interior looks like pretty much all soft touch materials, aluminum, carbon fiber. You know, where some people were saying that the ZR1 was a big step up in terms of, you know, interior fit and finish over the Z06. It looks like this is just kind of taking the Corvette name and bringing it to a completely different echelon of cars. And the contemporaries it has, I mean, you know, for 75 grand, that's like, you know, GT 350R territory. You know, I'm racking my brain to think of any direct competitors to it at that price point. It's kind of hard.
75,000 GT 350R. They're really okay. So it's 500 horsepower.
Used like Cayman GT4 maybe.
But okay, so number one, weight. That's a big one.
I saw some numbers saying it was floating right around 3,300 pounds.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
3,300 pounds. Also, what I love is that the valves, the valves on top of the engine are lower than the rear tires height.
Love that.
Which is what is the only other car that's had that in production, in a production car, has been the Lexus LFA. Shout out to Lexus, yo. And so the center of the gravity is incredibly low. 3,300 pounds, 500 horsepower.
33 and change without a driver in it, but yeah.
Yeah, so, okay, with a driver. So either way, $75,000. Even if you say it was 80 grand or something like that.
NA, 500 horsepower, 474
really
pound of torque.
Even a Cayman R is what, 400 horsepower, and those are like what, 3,000 pounds flat or something. Those are pretty fucking light.
They're light, but I don't know if it's 3,000 at the dot.
3,100. They're really, really light. I mean, a Porsche 911 GT3 RS, those are 3,100 pounds or something. So I have no doubt a Cayman R is 3,000 flat, but. Yeah, for 70, and a Cayman R is what, 120,000 or something.
They're not cheap.
Yeah,
they're not cheap, and they're only going to get more expensive when they start sticking the flat six in them.
Yeah, so then even if you call the new Corvette $80,000, you really don't have much competition.
No, you got a mid-engine car with a big old honking American bald eagle V8 with dope weight distribution. Chevrolet's magneto-rehological electric suspension, so they're trick, awesome magnetic ride.
Could you say that again?
Magneto-rehological. I had to say that when I drove the Aventador SV Roadster a couple weeks ago. And the biggest thing, as you mentioned, the engine sits so low in the compartment.
That's insane.
There is plenty of room for a big old blower. Let's just, I mean, we know it's going to happen. That 755 horsepower engine from the ZR1 is going to eventually make its way in there. What is the performance envelope going to be on this car? They're touting, you know, over 200 mile an hour, under 3 seconds, 0 to 60 on this beast. Granted, the ZR1 motor is going to be a little bit heavier, but an additional 250 horsepower on top of that, that's going to be a serious monster. And I am very much looking forward to seeing what that car does against the competition.
Dude, cars are getting so fast.
Cars are getting crazy fast, and I mean, seeing that price last night was half of what I thought the base. I honestly thought the base price of this car was going to be over $100,000. I thought it was going to make around the 120 range for just like the base.
Dude, I mean, I was looking at 80. That's what I thought it would be, like 80,000 mid-engine. They were going to make it more mature, faster, better in every single way possible around the current Z51 package Corvettes, and they'd raise the price by 15,000 or so. But no, they hit it right on the dot. It's like the same price. Yeah,
it's crazy. And the way they were able to do that is, I mean, versus like your standard Z51 C7, as far as like running gear and just overall tech, really not that much has changed to make the transition to the mid-engine platform. Now, let me clarify by saying, yes, it's a completely new, you know, chassis design. Architecture is totally new. But it's like a lot of that existing tech that has been perfected for the, you know, front engine platform has been transferred, except for, of course, this new 8-speed dual clutch transmission that is made its way into this car. And there's, go ahead.
There's only an automatic.
Right, yeah. So, I mean, there's people speculating, well, maybe they'll stick a manual. No, you can look at photos of the rear, you know, section of the vehicle. There is zero space for any extra transmission linkage. The packaging on this car is crazy, and especially compared on this LT2 versus the last 6.2 liter, the oil pump and the dry sump setup is actually in front of the motor, which takes up a little bit more additional space there. So, I mean, for everybody out there that is, any sort of sense of hoping that a 6-speed standard will make its way into the car, what are you all right over there? You gonna cry?
I've been sick for the last 10 days, so
it's okay. You're getting emotional about the transmission. I got you.
That's what gets me going.
So there's, and as far as I'm concerned, there's zero chance a manual will ever make its way into this car. And people are saying, well, I'll just spend another $20,000 to swap one in there. No, you're not. You're not going to be able to no, just
literally no.
Just give it up.
Impossible.
Not going to happen.
I did not read. So the unveil happened last night, and then I had work today, and I had work. Me and the dudes were talking about it, but I didn't look at anything. Is there any hope for a hybrid or any electrical assist?
So that is something I don't think Chevy was willing to tease anything about last night. They've been very coy. That said, there is a large amount of room in the front of the car where the current frunk is sitting that I could totally see a couple electric motors sitting. Granted, I don't think that I saw any space where they could be slapping battery packs. The car is already positioned very low to the ground. So that's something to consider. However, if you look at the architecture of the chassis of the car, the trans tunnel, or what would typically be a trans tunnel, the transmission is mounted, I think, behind the engine in this application. But there is a...
Really?
You don't quote me on that. I'm not totally positive. But the point I'm making is that there's a large tunnel that runs down the center of the vehicle that some people were potentially speculating that might eventually include an all-wheel drive variant. Because, you might be scoffing at an all-wheel drive Corvette. That's never going to happen. But if you look back in history, almost every single Chevrolet engineering research prototype vehicle, these serves that they've been using for the past 60 years to prototype new material. So like back in the 60s, they had the Serve 1. And then, most recently in the 90s, they had the Serve 3. Those were all all-wheel drive cars. So they featured electric suspension, because at the time GM owned Lotus back when they did the third prototype vehicle. So they had a Lotus basically engineered suspension under the car, which you could kind of say was probably the earliest predecessor to whatever Chevy unveiled for their magnetic ride suspension. But the point I'm making is it's not out of the question for Chevy to come out with an all-wheel drive Corvette. They obviously understand the performance capabilities that can offer, considering that they did it in all their prototype vehicles for the last 60 so years.
I think, I don't know if they'll do an all-wheel drive. Actually, I have no speculation on that. I haven't looked into the chassis or anything like that. But they are ending Camaro production, correct?
So I don't think that's necessarily true.
Well, here's what I think they're going to do. So they ended the Camaro in 2002, right? Or 2003?
Yeah, 02.
02 or 03.
It was right after 02, I believe.
02, 03, they ended the Camaro, and then they came back in 07, 08, something like that, with the new Camaro.
Yeah, the 5th gen.
What my speculation is that the next Camaro, they're going to continue the Camaro. There's no way they're going to drop the Camaro name.
The amount of praise the Alpha platform Camaros have gotten is insane.
The entire history of just the Camaro name is massive. So I'm assuming that number one, they screwed up this most recent design. The new designs are hideous. They're just awful. Was it 2019? So it's after 2020 model year, they're done. But
I genuinely get sad when I see the newest facelift models driving by. I'm like, oh.
I don't know who approved that. There's no way any design engineers or anyone in design said,
the front end looks like something they would have made from 2008 in the movie iRobot. This is what cars will be like in 2020.
I don't. Someone approved something and they got fired for sure. But
yeah, because they did a facelift on the facelift. They had the 2019 model year come out, and everyone's like, "Whoa, no! What is you doing, baby?" And then they come right back with okay, we got you. Here's our new facelift, and everyone's like, "That is still terrible and heinous."
Even worse. So my guess is 2025, 2026, one of those 2 years, they're going to come back to the Camaro, and it's going to be electric, all electric. I'll put money on the table right now for that.
Not even just a hybrid, all electric Camaro, huh?
They're going all electric. I guarantee they're going to continue the moniker of the Camaro. It's going to be electric, just like they did from 02, 03, or whatever when they canceled it, and those were just absolute garbage cars. Then they brought it back.
F-body Camaro has its share of followers and love out there. You can get the Trans Ams are built on the same platform. You get the the WS1 or whatever.
I don't know, but
those are dope.
See, I don't care enough, and that's why GM canceled it, because not enough people bought.
Oh, excuse me, WS6. What am I saying here? Those were dope cars.
So canceled it,
Just
brought it back, and
good
it looked retro like the 60s and stuff. Everyone loved it. Just like the Mustang came back after a few years, they redid it, and all of a sudden.
So now the Camaro is going to come back, and it seems like this is the future of GM.
This is the future of GM. It's going to be electric.
And Chevy Corvette is going to maintain the internal combustion
as long as they can before. I guarantee you, 2026, electric Camaro.
Well, I got to be honest with you. I'm kind of sad because, they also just teased some photos of the C8R. So, of course, Chevrolet has a long history of competing in racing prototype, from everything from their Daytona prototypes to, the Corvette factory team that has competed at Le Mans and the IMSA series and everything. And they just kind of officially released some teaser images of the C8R and its full camouflage testing. That is so exciting to me because I'm really excited to see a new platform, and the Chevy team that has been so insanely dominant. Jan Magnussen, who races for Chevrolet, has the most wins in IMSA history under the Chevy name. So they know what the hell they're doing. And it really sucks because their main competitor, Ford, with the fantastic Ford GT, this was their last season as manufacturer running the Ford GT. So we're never, as far as I'm concerned, we're never going to get to see the Ford GT, their Le Mans edition race car for GTLM, competing side by side against the new C8R like we currently get to in IMSA racing. So that's something that's kind of bittersweet for me because it's I understand Ford is trying to pay homage to the original amount of time that the GT40 ran in competitive racing series, but it's come on, you guys just released that new Multimatic version, which basically was Ford taking away any restrictions they had to, apply to the car for the racing specifications. So they showed that off at Goodwood. It's almost like a brand new car, 700 horsepower, racing slicks, even lighter weight, even more aero, just fully uncorked. And it's you guys have that awesome gem, and now here's Chevy with their awesome gem, and they're both mid-engine. So now it's okay, well, you can't be the C7R is front engine, and it's racing, it's a mid. No, we have two somewhat comparable cars, but we're not going to get to see them go head-to-head on American tracks, and that, to me, just feels wrong. I really wish Ford would reconsider. Be some awesome racing and awesome competition between those two, right? Am I crazy for that?
I absolutely agree.
That sucks.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but Ford recently they're going away from sports cars. They're all just going super econ box.
I mean, let's not say that completely because they obviously are very proud of this new Multimatic Engineering GT they just had come out. And I mean, they are teasing the GT500, which still isn't fully out. And that's a 700 plus horsepower monster, also dual clutch transmission only. I
feel though,
that's a beast right there.
It's a beast, but to the common sports car consumer, which brand do you think is sportier? Ford or Chevy? Ford or GM, I should say, actually. GM has way more under their belt.
Do they?
Yeah, Ford, what do they have?
Dude, Ford took down Ferrari, brother. That's all I know.
Yeah, they did. And they did this time as
1960s, baby.
They did this time as well. But Ford only has the Mustang now. And GM has what? Camaro? Well, kind of, not really. But
kind of, yeah. So they
name.
both have
Camaro name, and they still have the Camaro. All right, they have what, the Chevrolet Corvette. They have Cadillac, the V Series.
Oh, or if we're bringing all of the GM parent brands,
but you have Ford and GM. Ford and GM. So to me,
bro, have you seen the Lincoln MK6 though? It's pretty fast.
Dude, it's pretty dope.
Pretty quick.
What? Actually, no. Ford brought out what's that Ford Edge ST, and it's who would pay $50,000? Actually, no. I did see someone with a Ford Edge ST, and it had all these crazy wheels and stuff. I'm why'd you do that? For $50,000, you could have bought a dope RCF.
Well, see, one of my professors,
bought a GT350R. Those are $60,000.
One of my professors at DePaul actually does PR and advertising for Ford Corporate, specifically for the Chicagoland area. She's the head of their Chicago media distribution.
Yeah.
And so I remember the day they announced that SUV ST, and I remember just looking at her and be okay, so let's be real here. What the fuck are they thinking with that? And it's no, it's actually a really smart car. And I think, it's hip for young people that want something that's practical and sporty. I'm listen, your average young person that wants something practical and sporty, they're going to go buy a Focus ST or something like that. Or, if they have the extra money, the Focus RS or the Fiesta ST, which just came out with a new version in Europe. who I genuinely was like, who is this car for? And she like really couldn't nail down a specific person.
$50,000 for that car.
Who was that for?
That's why when I saw it, I was like,
the only way I could actually see myself in that car is if like I had some companies like, you need to get a company car that's an SUV. You don't really have any, your price range is so and so, but it needs to be, a Ford or a Chevy. Like if they like painted me into that box, I could see myself ending up in that car. But like you're talking dollar for dollar, you got to be out of your freaking mind to imagine that thing as being a total success.
The thing is that we've talked.
I haven't even seen a single review of it, by the way, yet. I know it's been out.
Yeah,
I haven't seen a single journalist get their hands on it. I don't know if Ford's not pushing it in a press cycle, but I mean, you'd think if they want this thing to be, touted as some sort of an enthusiast targeted vehicle, they'd be putting it in the hands of enthusiasts.
So I pulled up
Ford, send me a ST and I'll drive it.
I pulled up next to the guy who had it in an RCF, and I'm just like sitting there. I'm like, I knew the price of that.
Like these are like my RCF was cheaper.
My RCF was cheaper, and like I could have gotten a nicer car. I could have gotten like a C63S with 500 horsepower. I could have gotten so many other cars for the same price as yours. And also,
but dude, they have Sync by Microsoft, so it's like the world's greatest interface.
Yo, Microsoft Sync, dude.
Sync.
I can talk to my car, bro. I don't know what that car's for, but Ford is just going for, and that's the other thing too. You said they're like, oh, it's for the hip young generation. It's like the young generation doesn't have money.
Mm-mm.
They don't, especially $50,000 for that car. Mm-mm. If someone's like gonna like cough up $50,000, any car person, they're
gonna look for a car that was $100,000 that they can now get, or $80,000 that they can get for 40 or 50 used.
That car is at the end of the list of $50,000.
Literally, I don't know if I could think of a car that would desire less in that price range, unless it was like some loaded Buick or something else abominable. But
I don't.
So I mean, if you really want to drive the argument, I mean, now that the GT is out of production, I could see you saying that Chevy is a sportier brand than Ford. But so. I mean, like the future, the Camaro is uncertain. A lot of speculations that the Camaro is going to be gone. Some people have been saying, well, no, it's not going to be gone, but
it's going to be high. It's going to be electric. I guarantee you. It's going to be electric. I will put money
full
on it.
Electric. So you're not thinking any hybrid assist.
Full electric.
I could see them sticking like a little, their little 2.3 liter turbo 4, slapping some electric power on it.
I'll put money down that's full electric.
You think it's going to still be called the Camaro too, or they call it like the Camaro and like put like a capital E, like a blue E in there,
a bolt going through it,
a lightning bolt. And that's another thing. Where the heck is the other electric cars from Chevy? The Bolt and the Volt, like those were big things. And then they're just like, oh, we spent billions on R&D, but let's just go ahead and pull those guys.
The issue there is gas prices are cheap. It's so hard.
But you have to know they invested an ass load of money into the infrastructure it takes to make the batteries and produce those cars. So it's like, why not just like keep them going? You just released the second generation Chevy Volt, and the Bolt. You got the Bolt, the cheaper entry level electric car. I don't know. We've talked about GM before and making some weird decisions.
So I actually, as a car that I was looking at before the RCF, or maybe in tandem with the RCF, because I have to save money because the RCF is making me broke and my life is kind of just
it's all downhill from here.
I've actually thought about this before. So I can either plateau at this point with this car and like.
I thought you meant in life in general.
Well, yeah, but. With the RCF, it's like I'm going with cars in general. It's like I can either just like jump ship to another car that's similar, or once I'm looking at condos and like stuff like that. I'm like I gotta just sell it, and I'm going down from here on out. So I kind of
no kids.
So I screwed myself over. Instead of like just working my way up the ladder, buying cheap cars, use WRX or something like that, going up. I was just like yes, crap, and I'm just going down from here on out. But whatever. The Chevy Bolt, the electric car, I actually was like looking at used ones of those. I was like, they're so cheap. They're actually really, really cheap.
Like, what are we talking?
$11,000. They're nothing. $10,000
for like a low mileage one.
For like a low mileage one, they cost nothing. And for $10,000, you're not gonna pay gas. It's just a little econ box that you just like zip to work.
I won't be tempted to modify that.
Yeah, and if you live in the city, that's where it is weird that car failed, but they were so expensive. And the younger generation, the new thing is ride sharing. A lot of people our age don't own cars.
Mm-hmm. I know several people who have gotten rid of their cars and like, I don't see a need to go back to getting one.
And yeah, exactly. And ride sharing's taking over. GM Ford, one of them are working with Lyft and Uber and all that stuff. Like the future.
Yeah, all these scooters popping up around Chicago.
Oh my god, dude.
Scooter bros.
So we already had to talk about this. Scooters. I'm all for them, but we have to write laws that if you dump that bitch on a sidewalk, you ticket.
Sterilized.
$250. Sterilized.
Thankfully, I mean, I live in the Loop, and they have not made their way here yet. You go around the West Loop, you go around, like, you know, north of Lincoln Park, you see them around that area a lot more. They have not made their way into the Loop yet. And that I am happy about.
When I was in California, out there for a bit, in LA, Santa Monica, in that area, they were everywhere. Like to the point where, like, outside of, like, a restaurant or outside of...
You're stepping around them.
It literally, like, I did, like, people, like, I remember, like, David was out there, and he's like, yeah, dude, people just leave on the sidewalk in, like, a pile. I'm like, nah. I went there, literally, there'd be, like, 7 or 8 of them just dumped all next to each other, like, in a pile. And you're just like, how is that? And you have people are stepping around them, going about their day, and you're just like, how is that? So I think if they have them here, I'm all for electric scooters. Like, great, you can get around the city quicker, obey the laws as a bicycle rider.
Are you allowed to ride those on the street?
Yeah, if you stay in the bike lane, I have no issue with electric scooters. But the second you go on a sidewalk and you dump that somewhere and just sit there in the middle of the sidewalk, if any cop sees that or anything, that should be like $250 ticket.
Or yeah, like a relocation fee or something.
Dude, like that's absolute garbage. But yeah. So I don't know the Chevy. We just jumped around topics real hard there.
It's hard not to.
I know. That's what we do in general when we talk. ADD just takes over. But I was looking at a Bolt. I was like, I fantasize, like, imagine.
The only way I would see myself having fun with that is if you bought like a totaled Volt, or excuse me, a total Bolt or something that has, like, you know, minor accents you get for super cheap, and then do some like Frankenstein engineering, like swap, you know, Tesla battery pack into it to give it like way more power. Because there's people doing Frankenstein stuff like that. There's, you know, you can find forum posts of people that have slapped the Tesla motors into these Chevys. They're getting no range out of them, but they're like super fun to drive. So.
Oh, I bet. And like, or like even a total like Sparks. You can get Sparks for nothing now, like $7,000, $8,000, $6,000, and like they're in like okay condition. But like, imagining like now that I have my RCF, I just fantasize like, imagine driving to work
in a piece of shit.
That I don't care about. Insurance is nothing. And it literally takes me 2 days to burn through a gallon of gas. I like
You're reassessing those priorities.
I fantasize about it now. I'm like, I would have so much money for other things. I don't know, like an apartment or other stuff. No,
adult things.
But no, I love my RCF. It definitely gives me joy in burning through tires on that thing.
So to kind of bring us back to that starting point, I just want to give my final thoughts. I think Chevy knocked the Stingray out of the park. I would like to challenge the naysayers who say it looks like insert existing mid-engine layout supercar here by saying that you should be proud that an American manufacturer is able to do it for this price point. Absolutely. That is extremely impressive to me that they were able to get it to this price. It looks like the quality materials are in a completely different ballpark. Overall, hats off to Chevy. Great job with the Stingray. I can't wait to hopefully eventually get behind the wheel of them. And I know that some of the first journalists are going to start to get their hands on them in September. So it's not going to be long before we start getting some real-world testing, seeing some real numbers. I would like to see how it performs on the skid pad and just like really do some base comparisons between, you know, the Stingray Z51, the base entry-level performance. I mean, you can get it lower than the Z51, but as far as I'm concerned, it's a Z51 or nothing at this point. I mean, why bother? So I'd love to see how the Z51 compares to like existing ZR1s on a lot of the basic instrumented testing, you know, braking, acceleration, skid pad. It's gonna fuck them all up.
Other than straight line speed, the new one's gonna wreck him.
It's gonna be awesome. I'm just so excited for that, and it's just like an exciting new era for American automotive manufacturing. That's really how I see it. I mean, not to sound corny, but like watching that last night, I was getting really, really excited and feeling proud because I feel like we're witnessing the transition to a new territory. I mean, I remember being there at the Corvette C6 unveiling in Chicago. I remember seeing the C7 in Chicago at the auto show for the first time, and then watching this last night. It's just like we're in just a completely different ballpark, boys. Like we have a serious car in our hands, and I'm proud to say it's from America, to be honest.
No, I agree. I'm not the biggest GM fan, but with this Corvette, it looks incredible.
I know there's a lot of bros out there that are trying to get rid of their Toyota Super deposits and see if they can swap them over to GM. Because, I mean, if we're talking similar dollar for dollar, come on now.
The Supra, it sucks that Toyota screwed that one up. But we can talk about that on the next episode another time. But yeah, what do you think we call it here?
Let's wrap it up. We chatted Chevy Corvette. I mean, that's what I really wanted to talk about. That's the biggest, most exciting piece of news in the automotive industry right now.
Yep.
I think we both share our thoughts on it. We're both very excited to see them in showrooms, hopefully on the streets. I would love to get my ass in that seat and, give you some opinion for myself. So yeah, just really looking forward to more of what's to come. And I remember seeing the original Z51 C7 when I first saw it and thinking it was insane. And then comparing that to a Z06 or even a ZR1, like the stuff that's left in store for this car, I'm just beyond excited to see.
Yep, I completely agree. It's definitely a new era for American sports cars. The GT was like a different echelon of cars, but this is the new affordable American sports car.
Fraction of the price.
And it's going to be, I have no doubt that it'll be competing with the Europeans in no time, especially with the latter packages that are going to come on. So anyway, let's wrap it up. I think that was fun. That was good.
Great. Well, thanks for listening.
See you later, guys.
Peace.